Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to look at my camera, which I think is maybe my most inventive, but also maybe my strangest, and that is a Zeiss Contaflex. So the Zeiss Contaflex, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, but look at this little beauty right here. This is just a small 35mm camera. It is like almost pocketable. It's one of the smaller cameras that I have. And it's a camera with a fixed lens, so it's nothing like, professional. It would have been definitely more of a consumer camera. But all that to say, still very functional and very useful. So let's take a couple minutes to look at this camera and see what it's all about. All right, and here we are with our Zeiss Contaflex. This camera is, again, just a small form factor camera. If we want to compare it to a Leica 2 style camera like this Zorky 1, it's like, honestly, not that much bigger overall. Like, it's kind of a similar form factor maybe to your original Leica style cameras. So it is on the petite side, but don't be fooled, this camera has some really cool features about it. First thing to know is on the front here, your fixed lens is a Tessar 45mm f2.8. So this is, of course, a Zeiss designed lens. Tessars are known for being very sharp, and to have it be a 2.8 is great, and for the most part, as far as I understand, about as fast as you can get a Tessar lens. I find it interesting that it's a 45mm lens on this. I don't think I have any other lenses that are 45mm. That's kind of an uncommon focal length because normally you either would have a 40mm or you would have a 50mm. So I don't know where 45 comes from in this regard, but it works. So what I think we'll talk first about though is how the shutter is built here into the lens as well. That's part of why this lens is not replaceable, is because it's part of a leaf shutter system that sits right behind it here. The leaf shutter itself is one of the defining characteristics of this camera because it was meant as sort of a cost-saving measure, as something to make this camera a little bit cheaper. But it may have also been this camera's downfall in the long run. When we look at this camera from the top, here you're able to see several different planes happening at the same time. On the front here, of course, we have our focus, which goes from 3 feet up to 20 feet and then infinity. Behind there we have our shutter speed, which all you have to do is align that black dot to whatever shutter speed you'd like to use. And so we have 500 on down to 1, and then bulb as well. And then behind here we have the aperture, which is controlled by this little lever sort of thing here. And so, of course, we have from f2.8 up to 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 16, and 22. So we're able to get a good deal of work out of this camera. As you can see, I mean, it's about as good as many of the other cameras of the day. This camera is a 1951. That's about what you'd expect from a camera at that time. What's neat is this is actually an SLR camera, as you can see from this viewfinder here. So this is a 1950s SLR camera. It's got actually a really nice clear viewfinder, and one that I find incredibly easy to focus with. I actually think this is one of my most impressive cameras. The only strange downside, and I guess not strange, but just more of the time, is that this camera has a mirror that doesn't have like an automatic return to it. That was a later development. So when you wind this camera on here at this knob here, then the mirror comes down and you're able to see through. And then once you use your shutter, then it blacks out. So you're only able to see and focus once it's wound on. And it's not the biggest deal, but the blackout in this is kind of jarring compared to with all other cameras, you're able to see through them. But I guess on the bright side, you never think that it's cocked and try and take a photo and it's not ready. Like, this camera is very apparent. Whether it's ready or not, you will know. So now if we take a listen to the shutter again, you may have heard what sounded a little interesting and a little different than you might expect from any other camera. And so let's dig into that here. If we pop open these little keys on the bottom, we're able to pull our back off here. And inside we have, again, just a simple 35mm camera, exactly what you'd expect from an SLR. Here we have a Zeiss take-up spool. This camera is compatible with film cartridges as well. If you were to have like a reusable cartridge that you were going to feed film from one side to the other, you can do that on this camera, which I think is pretty cool that they made it that this is able to sort of work in both ways. Now let's once again wind on. So you can see in there our lens, but there's one other element to this camera which is curious, and it's that funny little trapdoor that just came down. And so right now our camera, we're able to see through it, and our leaf shutter, as this is an SLR camera, our leaf shutter is open. So that's what this is here. This little trap door is to prevent the film from being exposed. So when we wind this camera on, there's sort of a dance that happens here, because when we wind, our mirror is going to come down and then our leaf shutter will open. But when that happens, we can't let the film get exposed, so this trapdoor is going to come down here to keep the film from being exposed. Now, when we go to press the shutter, we have to sort of undo all of that again. So we press the shutter, and in that time, the leaf shutter closed, the trapdoor came up, the mirror came up, and the leaf shutter opened and closed again to actually get the exposure. So you can see that this is sort of a complex mechanism that's happening in here. And the idea was to cheapen the camera's construction a little bit by adding that leaf shutter, the Compor shutter that's in here. And with mixed results, honestly, because this camera and many of its contemporaries have reliability issues that exist today, that if we are going to drop our shutter speed a little bit here, let's try 125 and see if we're able to get it to go. Let's try one more time. Perhaps let's try something slower if it can handle it. And that's what I want to get to here, is that this camera, at my higher shutter speeds, 500, 250, and 125, this camera can usually handle itself. But once we start dropping 60 and below, this camera becomes much less reliable. Sometimes it doesn't even open at all on the shutter. Sometimes it opens twice. I've had some really interesting effects even with like ghosting, because the shutter does this little stutter step where it's opening and it's not able to quite get it right. I'll show some of those ghosting photos here on screen because they're amusing at least, but not necessarily the most reliable. Let's see what it thinks of the 1/8. All right, so there was a quick second there where it held on. I always also need to make sure that I hold down the shutter on this, because if I don't, then it will get really messed up. So let's try the 1 second. I have a feeling this might not work. All right, that was a little longer than 1 second. You could hear the little droning of the shutter there with the timing mechanism. Obviously this camera could use some love and repair to get it back to fully working order. And part of me would love to, because this camera is so cool, and like from a functional perspective, it's got like everything in such a small package. And I think the thing that again really sells it for me is how clear this viewfinder is. That is the #1 thing for me. When it comes to focusing this thing, it is a breeze. It is actually a joy to focus this SLR, because the alignment mechanism is so crisp and so clear. Now let's try again here and we'll count it. So 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. So right about 3 seconds of time there instead of 1 second. But you know what? Again, I'm not really using this camera for slow speeds like that, and I think I'll survive. But on the higher speeds, I'm able to get it to work yet. When it comes to putting film in this camera, I won't do it because it's so similar to so many of my other cameras. You just drop the film in on this side. You'll take your take-up spool. There is a little slit here on the take-up spool that you just need to pass the film through. There's a small tooth here that you might be able to see. If you pass the film through it and align it on that tooth, you will be just fine. You can place it in here, make sure your film aligns on the sprocket holes, and you're really done. It's not that bad. And so the only other thing to mention is here, this is your clutch on the bottom, so when you are trying to release your film, you need to just press that, and then it will disengage the drive mechanism. That's all we have for today. This is the Zeiss Contaflex. I'm really curious to hear in the comments, have you ever had this camera? Do you know anyone who does? What was your experience like with this camera, and does yours still work in any meaningful way? Because I love this camera. I think it's really neat. You can get them for not that much money, and I think that's, again, perhaps because it's not an interchangeable lens camera, and it has its own little shutter issues that it needs to either have serviced or just kind of work through as I am with mine. But yeah, that's all for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.